defines a generation. Music is a soundtrack of revolution. Music is a soundtrack of movement. Music is a soundtrack of cause. There is an intersection of politics and pop culture that you didn't even know existed. There's some boy, some girl sitting in a cubicle along K Street, somewhere in DC. A boy, a girl sitting in a cubicle along a hill with a Capitol with a dome who has single-handedly decided what you wore today. Whoa.
Mike Muse is an industrial engineer, a music executive, a political architect. He breaks down the intersection of politics and pop culture. This is the Mike Muse Show.
What is happening, America? I am so glad you are back with me again today for the Mike Muse Show. I mean, I cannot thank you enough for all the tweets I receive, for all the Instagrams I receive, all the DMs I get. You guys are so interested and so engaged in every topic that we bring up, and it's just so great to know that. And it's so great to know that you guys are interested in having a deep dive on all these topics that are concerning us, and really in the ways that how these policies are affecting our lifestyle, as you know, you always hear me say, from the food we eat, to the games that we play, to the cars that we drive, to the clothes that we rock. It all has some political and policy implication regarding that, and it's just so good to really peel that layers back in a really fun, informative way that's not about partisanship, but just about understanding what the issues are. And speaking of understanding what the issues are, man, there is this hot terminology that's going around called crypto. You might have heard about it, cryptocurrency. There's hot new investment called Bitcoin and different cryptocurrencies that could be used, and Bitcoin is one of the most popular ones. And we know about a couple months ago, Bitcoin was having a run, man. It was showing all the people the money. But then all of a sudden, all the people have lost some of the money, and then some people are just now confused of what to do with the money. And it's a very complicated world to understand of cryptocurrency. And what is cryptocurrency exactly? And what is a Bitcoin exactly? And what are tokens? But really, too, what are blockchains? And so it's all confusing, man. And so I have some really fantastic guests to really break it down, to really understand what it is. So by the time that we are done with this show, folks, we will have an understanding of what cryptocurrency is. And our goal is to be an expert within the next hour, man. But somebody who is really special, who is on the Mike Muse Show right now, has decided to take a dive into the cryptocurrency space. And it's for a couple of reasons. It's not only just for economics for him, but it's really for the social interest that he has in his home country, and his interest in wanting to provide access to those to be able to have currency and to spend the money freely, free from corruption, and to use it for good, and to give themselves out of upward mobility, and to give them that chance for upward mobility, really. I have a very special guest with me, and he goes by just one word alone, Akon. What is happening, Akon?
Hey, what's up, buddy? How's it going?
I am so good, man. Akon, I am so excited to have you on the Mike Muse Show, man. I have been a fan of your music career ever since you came out. You had a very unique voice and a very unique style that added such a great fabric to our culture and to the art form. But more so, man, I've enjoyed watching you couple your music career with the socialism and the social aspect of your life and of your business venture, man. And I am so excited once I've learned about the announce of Akon, man. I'm just cheers to you for taking a risk and take a chance and want to jump into a space such as Akon, man.
No, thank you, man. I appreciate that, brother.
What was it that made you want to jump into this cryptocurrency realm? And what was calling you with it? And listeners out there, I want to be really clear. Akon just isn't about joining trends, and he isn't just about doing what's hot and what's in the moment. But Akon, if you may or may not be familiar with it, he actually invested in solar to allow, I think Akon were up to 16, 17 countries in the continent of Africa with the ability to have light and to have electricity all through the use of solar energy in a very innovative way. So Akon has always been involved in technology, so he just isn't riding the wave or the bubble. So Akon, wanted to make sure you got your credit for that, man. But as we switch to crypto, man, what was it that was calling you to do this?
Well, I've always been in the digital space for a long time. And, a lot of people don't realize, we were one of the few to take real charge in ringtones back in the days, records and mixtapes and CDs, But ultimately, it was more so just trying to find a solution to Africa, because my concentration market in the last 5 years has been Africa and helping it to develop and, create an infrastructure for the people there to where they can have their own freedom to live properly, own their own, stake in the continent itself with all those resources that are being provided to the rest of the world that no one's benefiting but Africa themselves. So, and me having an African background, both my mom and my dad being African, I was born in the U.S., but I always have that African within me. And then, it's a very similar culture within what African Americans go through here in the U.S. and what Africans go through in Europe. So it's just a natural connection with that, and I always want to be able to give back to Africa, being the fact that they do so much for the rest of the world and have been recognized for it more than anything, having been able to utilize all those resources for themselves and benefit from it,
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
But what was
the biggest issue we're having there is just unstable currency itself.
Yes.
And a lot of it is due to, corruption and, outside, the West putting so many words, controlling majority of the resources there and not giving it back to the country. So the value of what it should be is not there, and the people can't benefit. So that's why it's such, a long, extensive line of poverty, over there.
Well, on the Mike Muse Show, Akon, we always talk about economic development, and I love where you're going in terms of using currency as a way to circumvent a corrupt government system that just isn't just unique to Africa, but corruption is unique to almost every democracy, modern and not democratized, around the globe, if you will.
Absolutely.
But in particular, when it comes to the notion of crypto, what is it about crypto that you feel could be the key that unlocks individuals' potential to be able to participate economically within their countries?
Well, what enticed me about it and what attracted me to it about it the most was security and the transparency within the cryptocurrency. See, a lot of people, the blockchain is the technology, but when it becomes crypto is you can say the encrypted software that's added to the blockchain that gives it the security and the transparency that makes it so powerful. Blockchain alone is just the platform, which is not as, powerful as without the crypto in it. You have to cryptonize it in ways to where, it's like it gives you that security that you need. You know what I mean? And it gives the people the transparency to be able to see, activate, share, get information, share information, and so on and so forth.
And also, too, the beauty of crypto is a whole decentralization of it, right? That is not tied to the government, if you will. And so it allows the citizens of these countries to be able to do transactions that can kind of step aside or circumvent the governmental system and be able to engage in the global aspect of democracy. And for so many countries around the globe, sometimes our government placed limits and limitations on how the flow of money and currency can evolve. But with that,
absolutely. And just so you know, that's the biggest problem, because you're talking about a world of 7 billion people that's controlled by a few families that you can count on one hand, which these are the people that control the money and the stock market and the banks. And it's really a very unbalanced way of creating balance within it. And that's the reason why if they lose control, it's not that the people will panic or there'll be hella chaos. No, that's the lack of control to the basic facilities that control the world, in so many words. So this allows the people back the power to make those decisions for themselves, not allow a few people in the office or government to make decisions for them, not knowing what they're really going for on a day-to-day basis.
Well, Akon, I will take it back here to America for a second. And the reason why our Congress is able to show a bipartisan effort when it comes to crypto, 50% for crypto, 50% other, and we can break down the nuances of those numbers a little bit later on. But there is this fear of it being in complete antagonist to the American economy and the American currency. And so there is this fear, and we are one of those democracies that is the beacon of the world, if you will. So with those complications even taking place here in the United States, how is it the reception have been in Senegal? One, from a government perspective, do they feel threatened by the Akon? And also, two, from a citizen's perspective, are they excited to learn about the use of the adaptive technology and the use of the currency?
Well, with the government, there's mixed feelings, because the Akon is for Africa, and that's what the A stands for, Akon. It just so happened it sounds like my name.
Yeah. Great play on words, brother.
Which is amazing, because that let me know that, okay, this was destined for me to facilitate that balance within the currency in Africa itself. But ultimately, some of the governments are for it, some of them aren't for it, and it's a very, and I think Bitcoin went through the same process, where even now to today they're trying to figure out a way to stabilize the information on it and get the information, control the information, and of that nature. But of course it's digital, so it's not a physical currency, and people are still trying to figure out, okay, what is it backed by? Is there anything it's backed by? Whereas the U.S. dollar, is backed by the government. But more than anything, the U.S. dollar is the only thing that's not backed by any resource. It's backed by the military. Every other dollar is backed by some kind of resource, some kind of, natural resource or, population or whatever commodities that add up to that value. But, U.S., we're backed by our military. Our military is the most powerful military in the world. That's how we back our dollar. And because of that, this is why so many wars being created, so many across the world, because the wars are how we continue to keep leverage. You know what I mean? That's why it's always wars in every, politician's agenda. Somehow there has to be some kind of conflict for us to have any kind of value within our dollar and currency. It's very deep. And I hate to go too deep because then it gets dangerous when we start talking too crazy. But ultimately, it has to create that balance to where people can start making decisions that allows people to live within this world comfortably and still be able to feel safe without having to worry about, the dollar crashing because of the stock market or, us being in a position where if something is not properly traded properly, that it could cause a war that we can all be affected by it. And, there has to be some kind of balance where we can make decisions that makes peaceful resolution rather than always being backed by a conflict,
What I love about that, Akon, I don't believe you can ever go too deep with a scenario like this. And here on the Mike Muse Show, we appreciate all conversations and all points of views and all perspective because it's all about getting the conversation and moving beyond the talking points. And far too often, our governments, our politicians are beholden to talking points and doesn't advance the conversation. So when you have people like you who has a voice, who has a platform, is willing to be a risk and to kind of be the first in, if you will, in some of these, not only in terms of the assets and investments, but also too in terms of the conversation perspective, man. So I salute you for getting the conversation going. And listeners, and speaking of conversations, you can always reach me right now in the conversation at I am Mike Muse. That's I am Mike Muse, M-U-S and Sam E. And you can also engage with Akon currently on the conversation at Akon, A-K-O-N. And also too, you can get involved on his Twitter handle for the currency at Acoin, A-K as in Kappa, O-I-N _. Akon, while I still have you on the phone, I wanted to talk to you about in the terms of what's also been announced is the 2,000 acres that the government of Senegal has granted you. And you have kind of reckoned it to be almost a real-life Wakanda, if you will. Can you talk to us a little bit about the practicality aspect of it? I know Wakanda is a metaphor, if you will, but what I've been hearing from you is really unique, interesting ways that people can engage in terms of commerce and activity and entrepreneurship within this Wakandan-like 2,000 acres.
Yeah, so that was a slight mistake.
Okay.
The government wasn't the ones that actually – no, but it's cool because that's why platforms like yours are very important so you can kind of correct certain things. The platform wasn't given to me by the government. This is actually a development project that I created, a group of partners who we're coming together now to build a crypto city in Senegal. And the whole idea for that crypto city is really more of a test market because we know that majority of the youth in Africa itself are very tech-savvy, very, very tech-savvy, and they understand fully how these functionalities work, how it moves forward, how, they're very, very, familiar with it. The older generation, on the other hand, are still trying to grasp what it is, how does it affect the community, how does it affect, the population and so on and so forth, where the younger generation clearly get it. So the whole idea of this crypto city is for it to be an entertainment city for the younger generation, the millennials, where you go there, it's business, it's residential, it's fun, it's creation where you have all these, tech hubs, and it's almost like a Silicon Valley for Africa within this area. Then you have universities from all over the world that come in, provide classes for the locals there, teaching them, training them, creating, knowledgeable, assets to themselves so where they can use that to really, help and be a part of the growth of Africa itself. And then more than anything, it's more for tourists outside of Africa to be able to come within Africa, see an environment that they're really familiar with, and then utilize that environment to expose themselves outside that environment and get educated to Africa, its culture, its history, and it just becomes a real trading area where the world can trade everything from knowledge to currency to products to, you name it. That's the whole idea. And then once that, the currency itself becomes crypto. It would create a future city with future currencies, with future legislations and laws and free zones where people can now be free. The people itself within that city are really, they're pretty immune to the outside laws that exist within that city. And that's what we're working on now, to creating it to where it's also a free zone to where you can go in there tax-free, be able to invest, ultimately, utilize all those resources within the crypto world currency-wise and be able to do the proper trading and do the proper, basically what the future will allow us to be able to do without having to be worried about the consequences of the physical dollar itself. You follow what I'm saying? And what comes with that.
Akon, I wish you could see me right now and to see how excited I am as you talk about this, man. And it's really hard to contain myself for a number of reasons. As someone with an engineering degree like myself, I am really excited for innovation. And I love when we are allowed for innovation to grow and to see where innovation can take us. And innovation is unlimited in terms of where we can go to change communities and to change mindsets. In particular, I love to advocate for entrepreneurship. And there's another guest that's going to be joining us too throughout the show who's also a big advocate for entrepreneurship. And what I'm gathering for you is that this crypto city, if you will, in addition to the cryptocurrency, will also be a way to remove the barrier of entry to entrepreneurship, which has always been the access to capital. So if there essentially is this free market trading of currency through the crypto space, there seems to be more of an ease for individuals, in particular within the continent of Africa, who may not have access to Wall Street, who may not have access to the venture capitalists in Silicon Valley, but they will be able to do it through the lens of crypto and digital. Is this kind of the thought process?
Well, the main process is to build entrepreneurship within Africa and also support the entrepreneurs that exist in Africa, jump in the dance and, their endeavors and keep it. So ultimately, but it's so hard to get it done when you have so many things that happening that goes against their plan and ultimate, goal. And the currency is the biggest part because it's so unstable that it can't stay stable long enough to even get a proper loan for a basic small business.
Yeah. And the last question I have for you, Akon, because it really kind of brings everything to a close with the entrepreneurship aspect of it and economic development of cities and communities and culture, you being rooted in hip-hop. Hip-hop has always had this entrepreneurial endeavor and spirit, if you will, and so many individuals have been able to do better for themselves, their families, and for the communities as through the entrepreneurial portfolios of their personal brands by the basis of hip-hop. There seems to be a lot of interest through the hip-hop community investing or participating in the cryptocurrency space in one way or another. What is it? And I think that genre more so than any other genre and also any other entertainment form of entertainment has been the most aggressively going after the cryptocurrency space. What do you think it is that crypto speaks to within the hip-hop community that we're seeing such this marriage, if you will?
I think it's the freedom. When you look at hip-hop artists, they come from environments where the freedom never existed. And they always look to bust out of that and have their own freedom. A lot of times it's financial freedom, because ultimately when you're in the ghetto, when you're making decisions to feed your family. But ultimately that one decision holds you down for the rest of your life when you get caught up within the system. So when you look at these things like this as anti-system, that's for freedom itself, and it also looks at something that moves towards the future for your benefit, it's a very attractive item for us.
Yeah.
So that's one of the main reasons that I know for sure that they do it subliminally without even realizing it. And ultimately, when you look at people from the inner cities, which hip hop, the majority of the artists and audience really are either from there or very intrigued about it. We're natural born hustlers. We're always looking for new, innovative ways to build and move forward. We don't stick too much on what's existing because we know that don't last forever, and there has to be the next step after this, and we're always trying to get to the next step.
Absolutely. Akon, that was a perfect way. I couldn't think of a better way to end that part of this conversation, this segment. I salute you, Akon. I thank you for your future, for your innovation, your outlook on life, and your want to change communities and countries and continents, man. I just salute you. And anything that we can do here at the Mike Muse Show to keep amplifying your work, man, feel free to let us know, man. We'd love to have you come back on the show.
Thank you, brother, man. It was my pleasure being on the show, bro.
All right. Thank you, man. Be safe out there, Akon.
All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was Akon talking about the Acoin, which is this fantastic use of cryptocurrency in order to create economic development within the continent of Africa and to really give access to entrepreneurship and give access to capital in ways that they may not have access to Wall Street and may not have ways to Silicon Valley and to venture capitalists. But lucky for you guys, and because this is the Mike Muse Show, I've actually brought Wall Street here inside the Mike Muse Show, inside the studio. The next guest I have with me, sitting right next to me, is an incredible gentleman who has become a cryptocurrency expert on Twitter. He definitely is shy and a little bit humble, so I'm sure he's not going to take too kindly to me giving him the social media cryptocurrency expert. But it's just not me who notices that, but it's companies such as Uber and such as Amex. And I'm not going to stunt too much on his bio. I mean, I'm sure you can go to Twitter at Tyrone Ross Jr. And be able to understand all his accomplishments and his great work that he's done and how others too see him. And he's been a great aggregate of conversation online and social media and in person through his conversations and through the summits that he attends, and also the work that he does as a partner at his firm, Noble Bridge Wealth Management. Ladies and gentlemen, Tyrone Ross. What's happening, Tyrone?
What's going on, man?
Did I get everything right, man?
Yeah, that was it. I appreciate you. You know, I'm not really going to plug it like that.
But did I do it enough to make you embarrassed and feel shy about the whole scenario?
Yeah, the expert thing makes me a little uncomfortable. I don't think my mother would appreciate that. Be humble, boy.
Oh, yeah. Oh, you want to hear Kendrick now? Is that what's happening in the background?
Yeah, little Kendrick.
Right?
Little Kendrick.
Well, if I make you feel shy and uncomfortable, that means that I've done my job, man. We just heard from Akon right now, Tyrone, just talking about having cryptocurrency as a way of access to entrepreneurship in your day-to-day and working with lots of startups that you do in your work and dealing with trying to find them capital and resources. How do you see it in the sense of cryptocurrency, and is Akon onto something as he discusses that?
Well, it's funny, right? If you talk to people about their interest in crypto, depending on where they sit, if they're a cryptographer, if they're a financial advisor, if they're a cypherpunk, they look at it differently. One of the things that I find fascinating is exactly what he's discussing, is how this is going to change the world for the unbanked and those that are underbanked, right? And if you look at what it's doing for Africa, there was a big piece that was done on 60 Minutes about M-Pesa in Kenya, right, which they've set the standard. Vodafone is involved there. If you look at the deal that was just made by Binance, which is the largest, I believe, second largest or largest crypto exchange moving into Uganda. Massive. What he's doing in Senegal. So crypto is going to, I think, 10x what we're going to see come out of Africa. That's what I find most fascinating. When you look at it now in the developed countries, I think it's about people who, again, are unbanked and giving them access and the power, right? As you and I always talk about, is you can invest in crypto. You don't need to have gone to Harvard. You don't need to know someone at the country club that can get you access to Bitcoin. You need a phone, right? Or you need access to the internet, which is very, very powerful. And I think the other piece of it is when you look at what it's going to mean for, and you know how I feel about this, I'm very passionate about it, how it's just going to change the financial industry as a whole. It's going to cut out the middleman, right? It's going to allow me to have access over all of my resources, all of my identity, everything that I want to share, right? If I want to share a certain amount of my information with Sirius while I'm here, I can do that. I can give them access to that. We may access each other's tokens and coins as a benefit to that. So the opportunity here is tremendous, but I love what he's doing in Africa. I think Akon is going to be great, and that's what the thing is important when you institute a token, as he was mentioning about, on top of a blockchain. You then can do really innovative things, which I think people thought he was nuts when he was doing what he was doing with solar. I think this is the next big piece of what he's going to do.
You talked about unbanking and you talk about underbanked and the ways that cryptocurrency is going to make up that equity, if you will, which lends itself to the whole narrative of fintech, right? You can't talk about cryptocurrency and blockchain, which we're going to get into in a few moments more, without talking about fintech. And listeners, fintech is this financial technology, the use of technology to improve and amplify financial transactions and engagements, which Tyrone also too is an expert, which is really known for in terms of reinventing this industry, financial services and wealth management within the fintech space. Tyrone, how can fintech, from a practical nuts and bolts perspective, support those who are unbanked and underbanked?
Fantastic question. So, as I tell everyone, every chance I get, the financial services industry changed in 2007 forever, and that is with the invention of the iPhone. Not only did the world change, but financial services were completely disrupted. And if you look at what's happened in from the 11 years since, you've seen a lot of different tools been developed for people to have control over their financial lives. So for instance, one of the, and I'm sure they'll appreciate the plug, but one of the startups that I'm working with now is they literally take your payments, round them up, right? People may be familiar with Acorns out there, and they take your change and they pay down your student debt. Brilliant idea, right? And you do that, right, by simply leveraging your phone to connect your debit card, right? And your purchases are then going towards paying down your student loans. That's one example. I think another example.
Wait, I'm not going to let you move away from
Yeah.
that too fast. And there is one thing, the tie that binds all Americans.
There you go.
Whether you are Democrat, Republican, Libertarian, Green Party, union, non-union, is student loan debt.
100%.
So what is the name of this company? And can you just explain that one more time? I don't want that to go over our listeners' head, because that is a great tool that people can access when it comes to that.
Absolutely. So the company is called Coins, Qoins. It's a young man. It's a pair, but the young man, the CEO, his name is Kirsten Zimmerman, and he is based out of Atlanta. He came up with this idea, and literally it works similar to Acorns right now. And here's the cool part about it. The initial idea was that you would do it just like a roundup. I pay $3.50 for a cup of coffee. Take that 50 cents. They round it up. They take that 50 cents. They round it up to $4. Take that 50 cents and pay down my debt.
Wow.
That was the initial idea. The next iteration of the idea is they're going to help you pay down student loans, right? He's in the process of working that out now. So again, as you just said, something everyone can relate to, and that's the power of fintech. A bank would never do that.
Ever.
Bank would never do that.
Your favorite bank would never, as we say on social media.
So, and listen, they have a daunting task ahead of them, but I just think it's an incredible idea, because it's one thing to round up to put the money in the stock market or whatever, but to help me, one of the things that as an advisor, I always tell people, what's the best investment? Pay down your debt.
That reminds me of another app that's out there right now that rounds up, and you can go into an investment savings. Is it, what's it called, Tyrone? You can round up and put it towards an investment account. It's another fintech application.
There's plenty. There's Acorns. There's.
I'll think about it on the break, and we'll come back to
Okay.
that. Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to remind you are listening to a fantastic conversation on Sirius XM Insight Channel. Please feel free to reach us and get involved in this conversation. As you can see, we're dropping some jewels here. You can tweet us right now to get into the conversation at I am Mike Muse, M-U-S as in Sam E. Also on Sirius Insight at SXM Insight. And Tyrone, what is your Twitter handle?
At TR401.
Oh, I completely butchered it earlier.
That's right. If you search, one of the most underutilized things in the world is the Twitter search function. So if you put my name in what you said, it'll pop up. But it's
Say
at
it again.
TR401.
TR401.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, to go anywhere, I have two more fantastic guests to really do more of a deep dive into what the hell is cryptocurrency. Stay tuned. Ladies and gentlemen, man, welcome back to the Mike Muse Show, man. I'm just such in heaven right now at this conversation. I really feel like we're beginning to really understand cryptocurrency and the value of it, and also too some of maybe the controversies of cryptocurrency and some of the reservations around cryptocurrencies. But we're also getting a chance to see how impactful cryptocurrency can be, man. And with that being said, we now know a little bit about the currency aspect of it, but now let's understand a little bit more about the technology side of it. And we keep hearing this term called blockchain, right? So everything is really run on blockchain, and that's what makes all the currency and the transmission, the wiring of funds, if you will, such a preferred method because of a blockchain. So because it's the Mike Muse Show, I bring only experts to you guys to really break it down. And so I have an expert on with me right now. He goes by the name of Mr. Mohammed Qasim. What's up, Mohammed?
Hey, how you doing today?
Man, I cannot complain, man. Your bio is so fascinating and interesting, man. I look at it and was like, I'm lightweight kind of jealous of this dude. Anybody can be CEO of a company called Platinum X. I mean, you just need to put rock star below CEO after that. And especially especially as you've been able to deal with so much with artificial intelligence, augmented reality. You're a blockchain expert. In particular, what I love the line is cyber and technical security intelligence. And that right there just makes me know, what the hell is that, man? And so as we get started, man, I want to welcome you to the Mike Muse Show, man, and let's just dive in, man. So what is a cyber and technical security intelligence specialist?
So what I did on a daily basis was I used to investigate malware and incidents where hackers would get into systems, and then from there I would try to investigate and correlate it to a specific hacker group with very known history of very specific behaviors when they're trying to attack or hack a certain system or computer or company.
Wow.
Yep, so that was my role at the time, and
Yep.
Since then, I kind of naturally progressed into the blockchain hype and really dove deep into, what the technology has to offer and, all the business value benefits.
I couldn't think of anybody better to interview regarding blockchain than you, Mohammed, someone who comes from that space and really investigating malware and really investigating that dynamic that attacks our vulnerable systems across the board, whether it's the financial services industry, whether it's our government agencies, right? Whatever can be hacked, people get into it. What is, from a nuts and bolts perspective, what is blockchain?
So blockchain is basically, it's a digital ledger in which transactions made are recorded in order and public. So you can imagine a peer-to-peer network, which just means more than, hopefully hundreds to thousands of computers is ideal for the type of operations that we're looking into today. But essentially these computers and these systems will all be connected to each other. And what they do is they all have a copy of blocks, right? Blocks on the ledger. And what that means is transactions that happen. So if I send you money, what happens is it gets recorded. You can think about it like it gets recorded on a piece of paper, right? And once we have X time goes on, maybe 10 minutes, 5 minutes, could be any length of time goes on, it gets distributed to the peer-to-peer systems. So everybody has a copy, all of the transactions that had happened, right? And in order too. So whatever I'm putting onto the block now is really looking at, the previous chain of blocks. Mm-hmm. So that's why it's very difficult to try to change anything that's happened in the past, is because everybody has a copy of the order.
Right. So, Mohammed, because you're so smart and because I love to see things visually, if I can add something and a metaphor to it as an example, and you can tell me if I'm getting it, because I want to make sure our listeners are really holding on to this conversation too as well. So the whole name of blockchain is decentralization in order for better security, if I'm not mistaken. So let's use an example, Mohammed, of a bank, right? Any bank. Let's just don't even say a name of a bank, but a bank has a ledger of everyone who has money and transactions in it, and it's normally held on some type of computer server, if you will, with all the names right there on one centralized server. The difficulty with that, and the reason why hackers are so successful, if I'm not mistaken, Mohammed, is because it's easy to attack just that one source in that one place, right? But it seems like what blockchain is doing, it essentially takes that one server, blows it up, for lack of better words, and splits it into a numbers of parts that essentially creates a decentralization of all the records and accounts of money and personal accounts and information within the system. Is that kind of a good way to think about it visually?
Yeah, it's a very good way to do it, or to think about it visually, but there's also reasons why, additional reasons why people are attracted to this type of decentralization idea, right? The fact that something is decentralized means that no one party actually owns it, right? So when you think of, sending money through PayPal, you're going through a PayPal service, right? So what if you're across the world and I can send you money without having to use a bank or without having to use PayPal? What you're doing is you're eliminating that third party, right? There's no third party involved here. You pay a small fee, you can, send the money across the world in a matter of seconds. And that's powerful. And when you really want to think about blockchain and what these cryptocurrencies and all of this hype is all about, right? It really puts you in the mindset of, if you think more abstractly, it's not just one person sending money to another person, but what if you just, abstractly think about it and you think about, what if one system can send another system another message, right? Without, the central authority or that third party involved. Mm-hmm.
Well, when you mention third party and you mention powerful and you mention regulations, I can't help but think about what makes our government so nervous about this, which is why I'm so excited to have Caleb Watney on this conversation too as well on the Mike Muse Show. Caleb is a research fellow of the R Street Institute, which is a really fantastic institute located in D.C. that's like a policy think tank. And Caleb has a really strong focus on this space. Caleb, welcome to the Mike Muse Show.
Hey, Mike. Thanks for having me on.
No, man, thanks for being on. Where are we in Washington, D.C. right now? What are our politicals thinking about cryptocurrency and blockchain, and what are they discussing right now on the Hill? Does this concern them? Are they nervous, or are they excited for it?
That's a great question. So obviously, blockchain has been a really big part of the discussion, both on the federal level and on the state level, and there's different kinds of legal and regulatory problems that apply to those two different levels. So on the federal level, we're seeing the Securities and Exchange Commission, the SEC, is trying to delineate are these different cryptocurrencies a security or are they a commodity? And there's really big regulatory, tax, and different legal ramifications for that distinction. And for your listeners' backgrounds, a security is something more like a bond or a stock that belongs as part of a larger whole, like a company, while a commodity is like a metal or agriculture or some sort of commodity that you buy on the market. There's not been any definitive ruling so far, but the SEC has indicated that Ethereum, which is probably the second largest cryptocurrency right now, they've sort of indicated that they are considering that a commodity due to how decentralized the network is. Really, if you don't have any, one main entity that can control or change the terms of the contract, it seems to make more sense to have that be a commodity rather than a security. And that also kind of leads into the second big issue where the federal government is considering this, which is sort of the taxation of cryptocurrencies. And so you have that same distinction of commodity versus security. You also have open questions about things that are pretty unique to the crypto space. So, for example, if you have a fork, like Bitcoin recently did, where they had Bitcoin and they had Bitcoin Cash, suddenly you have a whole new classification of assets, and how is that going to be taxed? And then on the state levels, the big question is about money transmission laws, and every state has their own set of different money transmission laws and what it takes to get a license for that, and it's kind of creating right now a patchwork of different state regulations as states are struggling through this messy question.
Caleb, you have brought some really interesting things to light. In particular, the question really is, does this all come down to taxes and who has access to the revenue share of this growing industry and of currency, and if our own government feels threatened by the sidestep of cryptocurrency as it goes towards the assets of what our currency and value holds. A simple question that I have for you, Caleb, is really the million-dollar question that I'm sure our listeners are considering. I had the chance to watch the hearing when Mark Zuckerberg came for the Senate hearing committee, and to really hear our senators and our politicals really question Facebook and to question social media. I felt like there's a disconnect in them really understanding what the technology is and what type of innovation Facebook really is, and it's Facebook. Facebook is something that we seem to be, anyone can kind of easily understand how it operates. Do you think that the politicals that we have currently right now are even equipped to handle and understand what is cryptocurrency, what is blockchain, in order to create effective policies?
That's a great question. And technical expertise, for government officials has been an ongoing question, and for all the different areas that I work on, from autonomous vehicles to AI to cryptocurrencies. Legislators just have a really hard time understanding some of these new technologies. And while there are lots of efforts and there are lots of organizations that are trying to educate and inform policymakers and make sure they have the knowledge they need, it's just such a big task, especially given all the incentives that legislators and regulators have and other just demands on their time. So we've suggested a couple of mechanisms to try to, improve how much technical capacity and technical expertise the government has. We've suggested resurrecting the Office of Technology Assessment, which used to be sort of an internal think tank inside Congress and could help give them recommendations and sort of really basic understandings of how different technologies like encryption work. But it's sort of been defunded since the 1990s. But I think now is a great time to resurrect it and refund it in light of all the new technologies that they're having to struggle to understand.
Unfortunately, in this day and age that we live in terms of partisanship, we can't help but see things through the lens of red and blue and other, right? So from your point of view, and this is your personal point of view, this isn't an expert point of view, so I don't want to trap you into that, is those who are advocating for the use of blockchain and crypto, is it a Democratic thing, is it a Republican thing, or is it a libertarian thing? I'm thinking about Rand Paul right now. Or are they all just like, wait a minute, pump the brakes?
Yeah. So It's hard to say for sure, where the weight is heavier in terms of on the Democratic or the Republican side. I think one of the nice things about technology policy kind of as a whole is that it does tend to be bipartisan. Unlike things like tax policy or immigration or welfare, there's less clear-cut answers in terms of what is the Democratic or the Republican perspective on issues like cryptocurrency or autonomous vehicles. And that's provided the opportunity for more bipartisan consensus to kind of emerge around these issues. And so we're seeing a lot of the educational groups that are in Congress and trying to talk with legislators are aiming to both Democrats and Republicans, in part because there seems to be more fertile ground there because it's just an inherently less partisan issue.
Absolutely. Tyrone, that brings me to you because Caleb teed me up, and Muhammad, I'm going to bring you in on the back end on the whole blockchain notion. Caleb was referencing the state legislation that is occurring right now, and he immediately made me go to the state of New York and how they implemented within the office in ways for individuals who want to engage in cryptocurrency in order to obtain license, if you will, and a license to figure out if this industry should be regulated, right? And how should it be regulated, or should it be just this wild west? You brought up earlier the struggles that we had in the financial market industries a couple of years ago that created this disruption and flow, if you will. As his regulations are where they are right now, and as you deal with your clients in the startup space, and as you are an expert in the fintech, how are they perceiving these regulations? Do they feel like it's stifling their innovation? And also, too, where is it from an economic standpoint of view in order to be able to go through the regulations process?
That is a really good question. You are killing the questions today, man. Thank you. So if anyone follows me on Twitter, they will know that I catch a lot of backlash when it comes to regulation, especially being a financial advisor. You would think, and being in a financial industry, you would think, and leaning a little conservative. That's another story. But you would think that I would be anti-regulation, but I think regulation in this space is needed. And I don't think the institutions we're going to see great utility and mass adoption until there is regulation. So I think regulation is needed. Now, a couple things. One, to your point, I think crypto is very much based in a libertarian standpoint, right? No government, right? Very little taxes, all that other stuff. But I think regulation is needed. And then I think what you're seeing is, which I like, on a state-by-state basis, allow the states to handle it, right? And then with some overarching direction from the government. So what happened is recently what you saw in New York City, which was big, was for Square, right, to get the license for then folks in New York City to be able to buy Bitcoin through the Cash App, going back to that whole, right, fintech access to. So I think that's big. And I think the other piece is no large family office, pension fund, institution, hedge fund are going to put money into this space until they are very clear, right? Okay, Ether's not a security, right? Bitcoin is a commodity, right? There's so many different things, right? Or it's not a security, or what is it? So until these folks really know, they're not going to put a lot of capital into the space without knowing the implications of how things are taxed, right? And the implications for clients.
So, Mohammed, where Tyrone just left off right there was essentially creating and discussing different industries and different sectors who have their pros and cons when it comes to crypto and cryptocurrency and how they engage with it. From a blockchain perspective, and someone who develops blockchain and someone who's seen the other side from cybersecurity analytics, if you will, what is the one thing that makes you bump your head up against the wall in frustration every night before you go to sleep after a long day of work in terms of getting government and other institutions, financial institutions, to really come to terms with blockchain and the benefits of it?
So I think there's two type of mindsets here. Really, there's two concepts with blockchain. You have both public and you have private blockchain. Both of them have their pros and both of them have their cons, right? So if you have a private blockchain, what you can do is you can mitigate a lot of the risk that's involved with, software bugs or any type of hacking involved. And you're also introducing, with a private blockchain, you can introduce regulatory and compliance structures in place that make sure that the systems are all working properly and that you have nodes on the blockchain that are privatized. Basically, you select who will validate the transactions. So when you think about it from, a higher level, right, there's a lot of different considerations, a lot of pathways you can take of, what type of proof of work and validation stuff goes into this. So as you start digging deeper into the technology realm, there's a lot more options that open to you regarding each specific use case, right? And so for the healthcare space, it's very private, right? And so I think there's a lot of value. There's coins out there that empower the users to basically sell their information for analytics reasons, right? In order to make money. So for those types of situations, there's different use cases. Does that make sense?
It does, but for some of those who are new to blockchain and new to this dynamic, when you talk about public and private blockchain, are you talking about in the scenario of where, let's use healthcare, for example, where there'll be 4 healthcare providers, they'll create their own blockchain source, right? And then you look at finance and bankings, there'll be like 4 independent bankings that have their own blockchain source versus decentralizing it all. Can you just elaborate just a little bit more and provide a little bit more clarity from a practical blockchain 101 perspective?
Yep, I would love to actually. So you have public blockchain and then you have private blockchain, right? So public means that every transaction that I'm making, right, is out in the public. People can read, write the transactions. They can see it, right? Like there's a way to validate that, Mike Muse purchased something at the store. You know what I mean? But I mean, they kind of changed the way the keys look and everything like that, so it's a little bit different. But what's happening is there's risk associated to that, right? So people can look you up. It might not be under Mike Muse, but it might be under your wallet ID, right? But that stuff would be available on the internet for hackers to go in there and see that. Now, with a private blockchain, what's happening is, if I reference what we talked about earlier, where the transactions are basically put on a piece of paper and distributed to all the nodes in the blockchain, when you have a private one, those who those nodes are, right? And so they're not really there for malicious purposes unless you've set that up that way. So there could be mechanisms where you, from a technological standpoint and infrastructure standpoint, where you can take different alternatives, right? So blockchain is a very broad topic. And so you have private and public.
So Caleb, what is the hesitation then with our government, hearing what Mohammed just talked about in terms of the verification aspect of it and the public versus private? What is it our government is most concerned of, if you will, and why is there such a hesitation to embrace this level of technology and innovation, if you will?
I think it's partially just an inherent problem with any new technology as it's being developed and adopted is, the government moves pretty slowly and technology moves very, very quickly. And you kind of have a culture clash from some of that, which is why it's important to try to, increase the level of technical expertise that the government has. I think another way that we can try to, sort of ease the government's ease and in terms of using these services is experimenting with financial regulation sandboxes. And so the state of Arizona just recently launched one of these, and they're providing sort of regulatory clarity and some regulatory flexibility for companies that want to come in and work with the Arizona state government in terms of developing and launching new services, which can be a really useful way of testing these services in a way that governments can be more familiar with in a carefully controlled environment, which then will hopefully also increase the level of familiarity that governments have with these technologies.
And Caleb, what is the government doing in terms of what Mohammed just kind of talked about? Because Mohammed, you both can answer this question too as well, in the sense of protecting our national security interests. In particular, voting is coming up. We have a big midterm elections coming up. We've been talking about, has Russia been able to interfere with our election system? Whether you believe it or not, I'm just throwing it out there. Could blockchain be a benefit in terms of our voting and election cycle? From a practical perspective, you guys know I love practicality.
I think
Sure.
potentially it could be. So we're seeing West Virginia is actually experimenting with a pilot test for blockchain-based platform for mobile voting in the upcoming 2018 primary elections. And so it'll be interesting to kind of see the results of that. But Mohammed, maybe you have more to say on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, with the voting mechanism, because each vote, relies on the previous votes, what you see is you can't alter it, right? So, like, let's say you were the 6th voter that goes in and votes for President of the United States, right? The 10th voter can't come in and say, hey, you know what, Mike didn't, vote, for, I don't know, President Trump or Obama or whoever the case may be. Because each time that we take a vote, we put it through the algorithm, right? And it's a serial algorithm, which means it relies on the previous outputs.
Yeah.
And so that's where you can see really the game changer is the voting protocol. People cannot change. Yep.
That's what I love about that in terms of the whole blockchain technology as we begin to think about the voting system and the type of security that it can provide. Listeners, if you haven't gathered any of it, just gather that blockchain is an incredible, secure way of handling sensitive information, if you will, including as we are concerned about voting. So Tyrone, to close from the practical perspective, just on cryptocurrency, and the most popular one obviously is Bitcoin, just a couple basic questions for you, and just think about it from like 101 perspective.
Yes.
Can I buy Bitcoin? Can I buy different cryptocurrencies? How do I go about it? Is there exchanges, for example, that I can do it? But then two, I keep hearing people making money when crypto was up, right? When Bitcoin was up, and then I hear people lost money when Bitcoin was down. How does one invest in something like Bitcoin too as well?
Very good questions again. Very nuanced, hard to answer really quickly, but. I think the one thing is this that I always get questions. People say, oh, well, the price of Bitcoin is $6,500. I can't afford one. Well, no, that's the one thing that's also great about cryptocurrency. You can put whatever you have into Bitcoin. Go into your Cash App. You could buy Bitcoin. It's $5. Again, this is not financial advice. I don't suggest anyone do that without looking at your own personal situation and talking to a very handsome advisor like myself. But so that's the first piece. So what I advise my clients to do, because right now the way our industry is set up, I can't personally go buy Bitcoin for a client like I would Square or Apple. So what I encourage my clients to do is there's a few exchanges out there. Coinbase, Circle is one, where they do a good job of their UX and UI is great. The design, to set it up is very easy. They do a good job with protection, right? A lot of your bigger exchanges, the New York Stock Exchange, Intercontinental Exchange, Goldman Sachs, all of these bigger conglomerates back these companies. So they're putting a lot of money into infrastructure and protection. 99% of the coins held on Coinbase are in cold storage, and that's just simply meaning the most secure way to hold your coins. So again, I would get beat up by the folks that was there originally directing folks to go to these places, but there's so many places you can go now. Again, you can do it through Cash App, you can do it through Robinhood, you can do it through Circle, whatever. So that's one way. And yes, as far as the investing goes, that's a case-by-case basis. I will say this, and I think this is very important. I don't care who you are, where you stand, what you do, or how you do it. It would behoove you to spend as much time as possible educating yourself on this space.
With that being said, guys, I think we need to do a part 2 of this. We literally have run out of time. I have enjoyed you guys so much. You guys have all brought such a unique perspective to it. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to come onto the Mike Muse Show and discuss cryptocurrency. Caleb, where can individuals reach you online, on social media, on Twitter, to keep the conversation going with you?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Caleb Watney. And you can also find all of my published work on R-Street's website, rstreet.org.
Thank you so much. And Mohammed, do you have a LinkedIn or anything where people can reach you at?
Yes, I do. I actually have an Instagram.
Oh.
You can reach me at mkassem34. That's MKASSEM 34.
Look at you, blockchain on Instagram. And on LinkedIn.
Yep, you can add me on Instagram, add me on LinkedIn, ask me anything you'd like.
That's awesome.
Please.
And what's your name on LinkedIn?
My name is just my full name, Mohammed Kassem.
Awesome. And Tyrone, where can they reach you at on Twitter? Or
at TR41 is the best place to engage with me and interact on all things crypto, fintech, and finance.
Ladies and gentlemen, you can find me at I am Mike Muse, MUSSME. Also on Sirius Insight at SXM Insight. Thank you so much. This has been the Mike Muse Show.